So let's take a moment to think a little bit about the ecosystem. I know all of you have alluded to it in many different ways, but the performers obviously live in. I mean, you talked, Gauri, about cradling the performers in many, many different ways, right? You have the ecosystem of collaborators and musicians and other artists who are helping you create. But you also have the institutions, the museums, the supporters, the donors, right? And describe to me a little bit, how you saw, uh, this whole ecosystem in the UK. How first of all, I mean, how does somebody tap into an existing ecosystem which exists in the UK, and then let's talk a little bit about what would be needed to create something in India.
Okay. Very interesting, Amrita, because the ecosystem also starts, suppose if we say we start from the government setup, the Arts Council of England actually does funding, grants to support artists. And it's not that only that you're recognized and you are accredited, will you be allowed to apply, which happens in India. Once you're accredited and you're brought in, then you become an artist and then you're given opportunities. Whereas in UK, any artist can apply for a grant. And if their application is strong enough, then they can be part of a funding system that they can, a ladder. So these ladders are very interesting because the ladders give artists confidence and belief in their work. Every work doesn't need to be top there, but there has to be smaller ways to build up. And that I found was extremely refreshing. So the first time when I applied, I actually started questioning myself, oh my God, should I, shouldn't I, this, that. But the ecosystem actually said, no, you should. It is important. You should apply, you should get in, think of this, think of that. And through the process, you evolve. So that process is very important, makes an artist brave and also makes you believe in it. So that was something which I felt was very strong and very democratic. You didn't belong to a particular school or a gharana, but it was a very democratic way of funding given to people. Also, the system of museums and art houses, art centers, which were giving support and residencies to artists. So I thrived for 10 years at the South Bank Center, where we created also fantastic collaborations, but also gave birth to a festival, Alchemy, which was again cross arts and ran for 10 years at the South Bank Center, bringing artists from the subcontinent, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka. So the idea was to create, again, a democratic way of programming, which again I found was quite interesting. It was not, if you remember, we used to do this Festival of India and Russia, and it happened, years ago, where you had the folk artists. It was almost not mirrored on it, but it had many more contemporary dimensions and visual arts and different spaces as it was performed. So that was something which again I thought allowed. What we sometimes lack is collaboration in the art form because we are mainly trained as soloists, or then we run our own homes and our own schools, which Tardi very interestingly pointed out. The collaborations were very important. And that was something which was again very interesting because institution wanted to see collaborative artists. Institution encouraged a rendezvous with a beatboxer, and thus the inception of something called Urban Vani, or with a poet, or with the company which was working in Antarctica on climate change. So your mind started having, so these trigger points were again very important because otherwise you can remain in your own cocoon and not see the wider world and see how well even the arts can expand into different horizons. So I think things and opportunities like this need to be created. We have something called learning and participation, which was school workshops, visits of school children to the museums, which I know are happening here as well. But we need to make them as a part of Rolling Stone. This is a regular recurrence that gives the confidence for the children to also believe and feel important. Oh, I actually learned Kathak. I'm not just sitting and doing my maths, but I am a trained Kathak. So when they stand in the pier, they also feel confident about it. So I think these ecosystems we need to start giving more support and more boost. And yes, again, I come back, the financial support. to artists because they are fantastic younger artists. But if they're not given the boost and the support, they start losing faith. They start looking for other opportunities to sustain themselves. So that's something that we are looking at, and we want to build up, even as a school and as an institution, how we bring other artists to come and collaborate and work with us. So that becomes smaller ecosystem to support a bigger one, which is what I saw in the UK. So that was very, very refreshing for the work that we did out there.
So, Padmaji, I think I'll ask you a question in a slightly different way about your experience. And you had you were very fortunate to have the gurus that you had, but you still the number of different performances that you did, the number of different countries that you went to, there must have been some amount of creating a network that you would have had to do, which I think a younger artist could learn from. How did you do that? Right. So there is some ladders that your guru would have created, but then beyond that, there would have been many more steps that you would have walked alone and created on your own. So tell us a bit about that.